I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I know everybody's really busy, and this is such a critically important topic. My name is Mary Moriarty. I'm the Hennepin County Attorney. We are proud to host this event. We also want to thank all of our panelists here, some of whom are going to share very personal stories. Domestic violence is a huge issue in our community and communities across the country. I knew that. I was a public defender for many, many years, and I represented mostly men, and I could hear kind of their side of what happened and kind of understand some of the dynamics. And it's brought me a very good perspective as Hennepin County Attorney. One of the things I pay very close attention to are the DV homicides that we have, and we unfortunately have had a number of them. And I look at those and I see that there was always a history there. And I think about how could we have prevented this if that was possible? How could we create an environment where women or men who are being harmed in a relationship can feel that they can come forward and get what they need? Because I know the criminal legal system has not always and continues not to offer what people necessarily need. So I think this is a really, really important conversation, and I'm looking forward to the discussion, and thanks again to all of our panelists. I'm going to hand the microphone over to Jen White, who is our Director of Community Affairs, and she's going to moderate the panel.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Obviously, as Mary mentioned, this is a very deeply serious but also personal for many people topic. And I wanted to take a moment of silence just to recognize in 2023 that we had 40 lives lost in the state of Minnesota due to domestic violence. So I wanted to have a moment of silence just to honor those lives. Even one is too much, so we want to just take a moment. Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and get started with introductions of our panelists here. We have a blend of advocates as well as those who have lived experience with domestic violence. So we'll just pass the mic around and let folks do introductions.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Siri Lokensgaard, and I am the director at the Domestic Abuse Service Center, and I've been with the County Attorney's Office for a little over 5 years.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Heidi DeFord. I am here, started wearing two hats. Number one, I'm a senior attorney in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office in the Child Protection Division. Been with the office for about 5 years now. Came from Stearns County, where I was 15 years there in their office. I also am a domestic violence survivor, so I'm here to sort of share that story with you in a little bit.
Hi everyone, I'm Primrose Ruocha, originally from Zimbabwe. I am a survivor of acid attack through gender-based violence.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for being here. I am Cece Olson. I am a domestic violence community navigator with the city of Minneapolis. I have been with the city for just over 6 years.
Hi, my name is Raina Alexander, and I just recently joined the Hennepin County Attorney's Office as an assistant county attorney managing their extreme risk protection order, kind of rollout of our new statute. Before that, I've been working in the domestic and sexual violence field for 27 years. The last 19 of them was at a statewide organization called Standpoint.
Different way. Great. Now we've got a second mic over there. There we go. Not have to share one. So to just kick us off, I thought we could hear from you first, Primrose, if you wouldn't mind just sharing your story with us. I think it's important to hear that personal story and how this has impacted you in your life. And being a survivor, I think that's really powerful. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your story.
Thank you so much. As what I said, my name is Primrose Ruocha, originally from Zimbabwe. I am a survivor of acid attack through gender-based violence. This happened in South Africa, Pretoria, and it happened on February 2020, on 17 February 2020, yes. I was married with a guy called Fungai Moriri who was extremely jealous. My husband didn't want me to see me talking to another man, and my husband was working as a land surveyor and as a gym instructor with big body. So he was a person who was a disrespectful person, I can say. So, and he was a womanizer too. Yeah, so living with Fungai Moriri was very hard for me. But you know, when you are married, you just think that maybe the person will change at any time. You will try your best to do good things, but I have seen that my husband will never change. So in 2019, I divorced Fungai Moriri, and we separated in April. After separated in April, Fungai Moriri saw my pic on Facebook in December 2019. Fungai started to threatening me. He was saying, "You think you are beautiful, so let me tell you, no man is going to marry you. You are mine forever. It's better for me to destroy you or to kill you, and no man is going to be with you." As for me, I just think maybe it's a joke because he was too far from me. Me, I was in Pretoria and he was in Cape Town. In February 2020, yeah, it was early in the morning on 17 February. Fungai came early in the morning by the time I was going to work. He just came and attacked me with a chemical called acid. I tried to talk to him like, why you didn't call? And he said, "You know what, I told you that you are mine. It's better for me to destroy you or we are going to die together." Fungai ran away. I went to the hospital. I was in the hospital for 4 months. Everyone who was coming to the hospital was crying. Even me, I thought I'm not going to make it. But what I was doing was singing and praying. I was praying, waiting for my day to die. Yes, I was waiting for my day to die because everyone was crying. So I just thought that, okay, this is the time for me to die. So when I sleep and wake up, I just praise God that, "Oh, thank you, God, I saw this time. I thank you so much." And I just pray, "Okay, God, if it's my time, it's okay. I won't deny. Take me." That was my prayer. COVID started by the time I was in the hospital. It was difficult for me to be alone in the hospital. My doctors died with COVID-19, but I survived. But I was not wearing mask. Why? I lost my left eye and I lost my nose. So I was breathing with a small hole, a small nostril on my right side. So for me to wear a mask, it was so difficult. So I just said, "God, I am in a pain. So if you think COVID is going to kill me, it's okay." But I survived COVID. After hospital, 4 months in hospital, I wrote my story on Facebook. It's Sisimeli's Diaries. I was in South Africa, remember, and the ladies in South Africa too. And Sisimeli's Diaries said to me, "Okay, we are going to do live so that we can search for help." Because I have 2 kids, I was trying to raise money for school fees for my kids since I was not working. Fungai ran away, nobody knows where he is even right now. And I did second live on Facebook again. That's where I met Comfort Dondo. Comfort Dondo called me on my phone number and said, "Do you want to come to Snow?" And I said, "Yes." Yes. And then Comfort connected with Mayo Clinic. And Mayo Clinic connected with me. So I sent my pics to Mayo Clinic, my medicals to Mayo Clinic. Comfort Dondo for Pumulani, Minnesota Women Against the Violence wrote a letter too. So I went to American Embassy with my 2 letters in my face. My face was my interview. I was a scary person, not what we are seeing right now. I'm so beautiful. Even me, I was scared for myself, I can tell. When I used to go to the mirror, like looking at myself, oh my God, I still remember crying, like, okay, mommy, why you didn't tell me that I'm looking like a ghost, like something else? Why you didn't tell me? Because my vision is very low for now. So I was so crying, but I thank God because I'm here, all right. So in 5 days, I received my visa, and then Comfort Dondo came to accompany me from South Africa to America. And we went to Mayo Clinic, and Mayo Clinic denied me because of my face. Mayo Clinic said, we didn't think that your face is like that, so we can't help we can't help you. So as for me, I just said, thank you, God, because Mayo Clinic was the border, was the bridge to cross Atlantic Ocean. I was so happy, like, okay, no problem. God will give us another way. So we went to Hennepin County, HCMC. So HCMC helped me, and that's where I am going now. I did 9 surgeries. 4 surgeries are from Africa and 5 surgeries here. So I just want to thank Hennepin doctors who helped me a lot. I'm looking beautiful nowadays, I can tell, than what I was looking before. That's my story. And I want to thank you guys, everyone who is here, I thank you so much. Not forgetting my sister Comfort Dondo, I don't know if she's here. I love you so much.
Primrose, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I know Comfort Dondo as well with Pumulani, and she has supported so many people in our community through domestic violence. And her organization is one I know that we have supported at the city level as well, and it's really impactful, especially with that cultural component. I did have a question, a follow-up question for you, Primrose. You talked about really a sense of hopelessness at first. Was there a moment that you realized that you had that resiliency to survive? What gave you hope to keep going?
What gave me hope to go far, like where I am right now? I thought about my kids. That is the first thing, that I have kids to take care of. So it's like by the time I was in the ambulance, I just feel like I'm no longer breathing. But I said, God, not now, because I have kids. So my kids are the one who makes me survive, I think so, yes, yeah. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And follow-up question, were your children able to come here with you, or are they still back home?
My kids are still in Zimbabwe, so I was trying to file for them 2 times. And today they went for their interview, they didn't make it again. So I'm just trying to try again, I don't know. Maybe they will come here soon.
Well, thank you so much for your bravery and for being vulnerable and sharing your personal story with us. I know it's not always easy to share that with strangers, but I do believe in the storytelling aspect, and it humanizes, right? It humanizes this issue because this is people. It's not just domestic violence, but there are people involved, children involved, families involved. So really, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Next, I would love if we could shift gears a little bit. Heidi, I know that you have been, very open with your story as well, but also, how that the work really has impacted your story, and really both ways, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit with us.
Sure. Am I on?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. So a little bit about myself. Like I said, I'm an assistant Hennepin County attorney now. In 2007, I was living in Stearns County. I was an assistant Stearns County attorney. And during that time, I was prosecuting domestic violence cases, and I was also being battered. So in March of 2007, it was actually International Women's Day, ironically, I was beaten for about 2.5 hours. I was bound, gagged, punched. I ended up with a severe concussion, ruptured eardrums. Some people who were at the event earlier today saw photos of me. I was really unrecognizable even to myself. And I had held this secret for about 12 years. I was in this relationship. He followed me. I dealt with this all through law school. I worked full time, went to law school at night, and was being severely battered. Really nobody knew. When I came to Stearns County, I did start to tell a few people, a few trusted people. I was a colleague in my office. I started to tell a little bit too, just enough to sort of help me get safe. I did tell a trusted person in law enforcement. I went to her one day when he was, I don't remember what he was doing, but I remember going into her office and saying, like, I don't know what to do. And she's like, today's the day, like, then today's the day we can get out. And I'm like, today's not the day. So ultimately, I was in the midst of being severely assaulted in the morning. He my phone rang because I didn't show up for work. And I had sort of created a safety plan enough with my friend that she knew if I didn't show up, something bad had happened. And she called me from the office, and all I remember her saying is, on my flip phone, I remember it was a blue flip phone, she said, should I make that call? Or she said, are you okay? And I'm like, oh yeah. And in the meantime, he's like looming over me, he was whipping me with a belt. I may have still been bound at that time, and she said, well, should I make that call? And I was like, oh yeah, go ahead and make that call. Short time later, then plainclothes deputies were actually at my door. She had gone directly to the Stearns County captain of the sheriff's department so that it wouldn't go over 911, so it wouldn't end up being fodder for the news. And plainclothes detectives were then at my door, and I say that was the moment that I went from being a victim to being a survivor. It was really when I started to live again, when I was really free again. Although at that point, the secret that I'd held so tightly was, like I say, could have been front page news. That was a Thursday. I went back to work on Monday, even though I was still so swollen and bruised because I knew everyone was talking about me. So I thought, well, you may as well just talk to me. I knew they had called a big office-wide meeting to sort of talk about what happened to Heidi. And I'm like, let's talk to Heidi about what happened to Heidi, because I'm sort of tired of telling secrets. So everybody was very supportive. I obviously couldn't work full-time because I was pretty severely injured. Had to get advocacy help to get out of my lease at the time. And so I was lucky in that I sort of had that community. So as I hear other survivors' stories, I know how privileged I am in order to have those people sort of in my back pocket. Other people have to go seek that out and all the barriers they have to sort of navigate to get there, and I didn't have to do that. I shared earlier today sort of one of the biggest things for me that I like to tell other service providers is the one thing, I know I was super supported, but the one thing that I remember most vividly is getting a call from the county that was handling this as a conflict case, because obviously Stearns County couldn't, you may know it, it's on the other side of the river. And the advocate said to me after she got another DANCO or OFP violation case, because I continued to call them in, even though I didn't want to, he would leave me multiple messages, right? And so I had a deputy who was assigned to me because he was my friend. So I would call him and say, hey, Dan, I got another bunch of calls. I'm not going to want to talk to you tomorrow, so will you just come to my office? So he would come to my office and download those, because I would call like in the middle of the night or whatnot, because I knew I would be not wanting to cooperate in the morning. So he would come, and so the other county got all this information, and she said to me, well, I didn't know this was going to be a lifelong obligation for us. So of all the things I remember, of all the loving support, the verbatim thing that I remember is that. So I try to let people know repeatedly that the words we use, how we speak about survivors of intimate violence matters all the time. I shared with our people today that not only because of ourselves individually, but we as assistant county attorneys or other staff from the office, the weight and the credibility that our office carries with it also carries with it a responsibility to speak in a manner that demonstrates that respect, not just in court, but all the time, because a lot of what forced me to stay was my own sort of barriers I put up that were built on shame and embarrassment. And we as a society, even as service providers, as the legal profession, we help sort of keep those chains in place. So every time we speak about that, I think it's important for us to remember that those things are important, and what we say matters, and people are listening to that. So I think the way I frame the work that I do is all sort of based on not only my own story, but remembering that, there's survivors and people that are living this that look like all of us and look different than all of us. And so everything we do in sort of every area of the office and every area of the community is impacted by that. And I try to sort of frame the way I walk through the world, but certainly the way I walk through the work that I do on a daily basis, and the people that I supervise, try to remind them of that as well.
Thank you so much, Heidi, for sharing your story. I know it can be difficult at times, and I know that you have been very open with sharing that, and I think it's really important, especially the language, the words matter, how we refer to victim survivors, some of those details, and that this can be an ongoing process for folks, right? It's not just that, one day you wake up and decide this is it, this is the day. I wrote down when you were saying today is not the day, and that's real, and that's okay. So I think we'd like to shift a little bit just to hear from some of our advocacy and professional staff on, working with folks, victims, survivors, and their families. So Siri, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off and talking a little bit about DASC and the resources that we have available, and the partners that we work with in DASC as well.
Great, thanks Jen, and I just want to start and thank again Heidi and Primrose for sharing their personal stories and just how much strength and bravery and courage that you both have in doing so thank you. So the Domestic Abuse Service Center, just to start, is nationally recognized and we were established in 1994. Really with the creation and mission that has really evolved over the last 30 years. And that mission statement is to respond to the needs of domestic violence through a trauma-informed lens delivered by a diverse and inclusive staff that reflect the communities that we serve. So what do we do at DASC? The best way to explain it is that the center really serves as a place where victim survivors of domestic violence can receive multiple services in one centralized location. We are part of the Victim Services Division, which is governed by the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. Just some office details. Our office hours are Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And right now we are located on the lower level of the government center. We will be moving here shortly in the next couple months, moving to the A side, but more information to come on our website. We have several partner agencies and organizations on site at DASC, which really allows us to do the work that we do. What we know about the work is that collaboration is key, and this work cannot be done alone. So our partners include advocates. We have both Hennepin County attorney advocates as well as community advocates, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also partner with an organization called Central Minnesota Legal Services. They are a legal aid organization here in the cities, and they are located on site to provide pro bono and legal representation and consultation for victim survivors. Oftentimes, they are assisting with order for protections, but we also know when it comes to domestic violence, there are other co-occurring concerns and issues. So they can provide pro bono legal representation and consultation on divorce cases, child support, custody, housing matters, employment issues, etc. We also have a prosecution team at DASC. So our prosecution team is made up of one Hennepin County attorney, one Minneapolis city attorney, one Hennepin County probation officer, 2 MPD, so Minneapolis Police Department domestic violence investigators, 1 Hennepin County paralegal, and 2 Hennepin County advocates. And so our prosecution team really follows up on all gone on arrival domestic violence police reports in the city of Minneapolis. And if you're not familiar, gone on arrival reports are those police reports that are made and the suspect or the other party is not arrested at the time of the report. Either they fled or the report is made following a domestic violence incident. And so our prosecution team, we receive all of those reports. They are reviewed by a prosecutor, either the Hennepin County prosecutor or city, depending on what level of offense the report is. And then they review the report to see how they're gonna move forward or if they're able to move forward in terms of charges or no. And then our advocates then get assigned to all of those cases and then they follow up and provide support, letting the victim survivor know what's going on with that report. Because again, oftentimes victim survivors don't know what happens after they make a report, especially if the suspect is not arrested. And what we know is that those cases can definitely fall through the cracks, and that's not okay. So a victim survivor or advocate will follow up and let them know what's going on with the report and then offer resources and provide referrals as needed. And then lastly, we also partner with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department. They are on site at our center to provide safety, not just for staff, but to the community. What I will say about DASC. Hello. What I will say about DASC is we do serve all individuals. So we do serve folks who identify as a victim survivor as well as an individual who identifies as using abusive behavior. So we are equal access at DASC. We offer several services at DASC. So to start, we provide culturally specific and trauma-informed advocacy and services. I cannot stress enough how important and crucial it is for a victim survivor to be able to work with someone who looks like them, speaks their language, and understands the different cultural barriers that they may face. Because we know that that is going to look different for each and every single person that we work with. So to assist with that, we provide multilingual advocacy, which is offered at the center. Currently, we have advocates on site who speak the following languages: English, Hmong, Somali, Spanish, Nepali, Hindi, Newari, Tamil, Telugu, and Sanskrit. And if we are unable to meet the language need, we do have a language line interpreter service that we can access. And really, in order to offer these services, we contract with a number of advocacy agencies. The first is Asian Women United, Esperanza United, SIWA AIFW, which stands for Asian Indian Family Wellness to serve the Southeast Asian community, and the Domestic Abuse Project. We've also secured an African American grant with the Office of Justice Program as well. And then lastly, we do partner with Division of Indian Work, and I saved that organization for last because we do have our advocate from Division of Indian Work, Jillian. So I'm just gonna put you on the spot, Jillian, have you stand up and just introduce yourself and just share a little bit about your organization. The primary services that we offer at the center are assisting victims with filing order for protections. DASC assists with over 80% of all order for protections in Hennepin County, which, knowing that Hennepin County is the largest judicial district in Minnesota, that is a heavy lift, but we are here to support. And then we also, our advocates assist with safety planning, crisis support, and intervention as well. Currently, how to access our services, all of our services are being provided both on site, in person on a first come, first served walk-in basis, as well as over the phone. So if anyone is interested in services at DASC, they can either pick up the phone and give us a call and schedule an appointment for over the phone. What that looks like is they get connected with an advocate at their appointment date and time, and the advocate provides all of the services over the phone. And so if someone wants to file an order for protection, the advocate is walking them through and filling out the paperwork with the individual. Really what that does is, and what we've learned through some surveys that we have conducted, specifically during the pandemic, is that by providing services both in person and over the phone, it's really increased access and reduced barriers. So victim survivors no longer have to take time off of work, drive downtown, pay for parking, and find childcare in order to access our services. What I will also say too at DASC is we do have a playroom. We never want childcare to be a barrier to access our services. And so if you have kiddos, you're welcome to come down to DASC. Kiddos can utilize the playroom and play while you, parent or guardian, meets with an advocate to access services. We also have what we call our quiet room or wellness room. Oftentimes for victim survivors, DASC is the first point of contact following a domestic violence incident. And so we are oftentimes referred to as a crisis center. So if someone comes into our center in crisis, we do and can bring them back to our quiet room to access services. It's a room that's made up of dim lighting, comfortable chair, it's behind secured access for safety as well. It's also a space as well if a victim survivor comes into our center with presenting injuries to avoid, must just be me, to avoid just being around everyone in the lobby. They're welcome to use this room as well. And then lastly, we do have a pantry. And so again, the pantry is made up, has a lot of basic needs: diapers, wipes, formula, Tide blankets, snack packs for kiddos, coloring books, journals, you name it. So we're here to support, and don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Great, thank you so much, Siri, for giving us an overview of DASC, which is a really amazing resource for community and accessible to folks. Want to shift a little bit to CC. I know CC is located out here in the 4th Precinct, which is right down the street. So if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about your work and also the importance of you being embedded at the precinct, which is in community, which I think is unique in a lot of ways and makes you a lot more accessible to folks.
Sure, yeah, thanks. Again, my name is Cece. I am a community navigator with the City of Minneapolis, currently through the Neighborhood Safety Department and embedded within Minneapolis Police. And right now I am embedded, my office is at the 4th Precinct, which is just right down the road. I have been with the department now for about almost 6 years. And I've always focused predominantly on working with victim survivors of domestic violence. And so my role is very similar to some of the advocates that work at DASC. I work very closely with DASC and a bunch of other agencies as well. But my role really is to be a resource for victim survivors of domestic violence on the north side. Pretty basic as that. My job is to follow up with individuals that have called 911 for some type of domestic related incident. Whether a report was made or not, I'm trying to reach out to as many 911 callers that are reaching out for assistance as possible. What that looks like, it differs for every person, but most of it is just trying to get some basic communication, open line of communication, checking on them, acknowledging that they called police. I think that's a really important thing that we as domestic violence service providers and victim survivors sometimes forget, that it means a lot just to acknowledge that you even called the police, let alone, were assaulted. So whether, like I said, an arrest was made or any major incident happened, but it takes a lot of courage and dedication and even fear for victims to get to the point where they're going to call 911. And I do my best to try to validate that. whether they want something done or not, but just validate that I saw that you called police. I'm sorry that you had to do that, and is there something that I can help you with? Again, what that help looks like is safety planning, really trying to figure out where they're at with what happened, if they're looking for some type of protection order, if they are looking for assistance with housing or food or any basic necessities that they might need assistance with. If they are looking for protection orders, I myself I'm equipped to file protection orders and go to court and assist victims through family court, civil court, and also criminal court as well, based on my past work experience. So I do that with them. I also help significantly with investigation and prosecution of these cases, especially with the city attorney's office. I have access to all of the reports that are being made, the incidents, and obviously being embedded within the department, I have access to the investigators that are assigned to the cases and so on and so forth. So really being a voice for victims within the department, trying to make sure that their cases are being investigated, looked at, and at least being told what is happening with their case, whether a case is being charged or not, they're at least being told what is happening. When our program was created, we really talked about, the importance of this role and why the community wanted us. Our positions were created after a widespread initiative was brought forth where we were put into the community and asked what the community wanted in regards to the city and in regards to Minneapolis police. And they really wanted to help work on the relationship and the trust between law enforcement and the community. And so that's where our unit was created, is to really help build a stronger bridge between the police and the community. Again, what that looks like differs from agency to agency and from person to person. But I really try to build trust within the department by providing resources, providing to show that, Minneapolis PD actually cares enough about you to have somebody follow up with you, to provide services and support and actually give you an answer on what's happening with your case. And that helps build trust. Open communication helps build trust in my mind. So that's, again, one point of the position. And you asked about being at 4th Precinct. Yeah. So again, I'm unique in regards to I'm embedded within the police department, within the precinct, and that has been really unique because a lot of different domestic violence agencies or advocates don't work specifically within a police setting. They're in a more general community setting, which again I was a little bit concerned about, worrisome at first of how that was going to work because I wasn't sure if people would feel comfortable enough to come and work with me at the precinct, would be, feel comfortable coming to a police setting. And I've seen that it really has opened up a door to accessibility for people. With being an advocate that follows up on most of the cases that come from the north side here, being embedded in the north side has helped significantly for people to just come directly to me, to walk into the precinct, and to get access to resources right within their community. And I hear it daily that it helps open their eyes to a different side of policing. That they tell me all the time, I never thought that I'd walk into a precinct, or, I never thought that I would trust police enough to come and actually be within their setting. But with the environment that I've created within the department, in my own office, and, creating a space of sanctuary and a place of comfort, I hope, and I've been told that I've helped create a different mindset for people in regards to law enforcement. That, again, it doesn't always have to be a negative, that there is some positive association with law enforcement. And again, having that person to at least acknowledge, that something happened and that, MPD has somebody that the officers can refer out to that they know is going to actually follow up with them, really helps build that trust with the community. So again, we're a small group, a strong but mighty team. I unfortunately am the only domestic violence community navigator at the time right now. I've been that way since the beginning. So for the while I was citywide, but it just became too much. But we just get approval from the city council to get two more of me. Two more domestic violence community navigators for the city. So they will hopefully be embedded in two other precincts within the city to provide same or similar resources that I do for victim survivors here on the north side, and then now hopefully on the south side as well. So I always say I'm always a resource to anybody. I, again, have a lot of connections, a lot of information. For domestic violence in particular, information is power. The more information we can provide to these women, the more power they gain back from their abuser. So if you have people, like whether it's yourself or other, people that have cases, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a domestic case, but if you have made a report with NPD and you're not getting a response back or don't know what happened with your case or have questions about what's happening or what will happen, please send them my way. I always can get them connected, either myself or there are other general community navigators within the department that I can get them connected to as well. I would like to be a conduit of information for people, and please don't hesitate to do that or utilize me if you need to.
Thank you, Cece. I just want to follow up a little bit. So word spread pretty quickly through community when you started working in the precinct, and that trust that you continue to show up and continue to build. I know that got out there, and it was, go to the precinct and ask for Cece. And I know a lot of people do that, or they'll call and they'll ask specifically for you. So I wanted to toot your horn just a little bit. Because I think that you have become that very trusted person, and word has gotten out that you're there, and folks are able to utilize you and your resources that you bring. One quick follow-up before we move on to Raina. I know you talked a lot about being available to community, but can you just speak a little bit about also how your work and your perspective and you being a resource within the department has impacted the officers and law enforcement by providing that perspective and expertise that you bring?
Sure, no, that's a good question. I think I have humanized, at least in the precinct that I'm in, have humanized victim survivors a lot more for officers than there ever was before, because I brought a different mindset. I brought in, again, an advocate type of mindset into the work that trying to educate officers on the ins and outs and different perspectives of victims, and trying to educate them on just some of the basics of, a lot of times victims aren't calling 911 because they necessarily want their abuser arrested, they just want the abuse to stop. And trying to educate officers on how to deal with those situations and approach them differently. Again, it's always a work in progress to try to create change within a big entity like Minneapolis Police. But I feel like I have implemented myself enough that I have, again, gained a name for myself that what I say they take to heart. And I haven't had the opportunity now to be in charge of all of the domestic violence training that comes forth with all of the new recruits that come through the department. So I feel like I really have been able to change the dynamic of how officers, at least new officers, I haven't got to all of the older ones yet, but the newer officers deal with domestic violence calls to the best of my ability, obviously, because we know that there's never enough education in regards to domestic violence and response. But I feel like there has been an opening of minds in regards to understanding of just like the basics of why victim might stay or why they're not cooperative once officers arrive, and how to approach these calls. And just also I think having a person that officers trust enough to know that if they refer that person to me, they themselves know that that person is going to get assistance. And I think that also helps them as an officer, that they're not just going to these calls, handing them a piece of paper and saying, okay, figure it out. At least personally, they know that person is going to get the assistance that they deserve and need, and so on and so forth. And that helps build trust in the community as well. You know, that not only with officers but with victim survivors is, you know, this officer cared enough to put this person's phone number on here. She called me and was actually able to provide the resources that were said were going to happen. So I do pride myself on that, you know, is that I really do my absolute best to provide assistance that I can, because it is a reflection on officers in the long run. Again, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I appreciate the question.
Absolutely, and it's important. It's a two-way street as well, and it really does take all of us, right? Those of us in community, those of us who work in systems, those of us who work in law enforcement, really to work together to impact our communities. Want to shift now to Raina Alexander. We received a new tool last year around extreme risk protection orders, so if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about your work and really how important that is as well.
So in 2023, along with every other law that the Minnesota legislature passed, which was basically they changed every single law that existed in Minnesota and then they wrote a whole bunch of new ones. That's literally what happened in the 2023 legislative session. It was intense. One of the things that the legislature passed was a statute called an extreme risk protection order. Some communities might know this as red flag laws. And these are orders that are designed very specifically for one purpose, and that is to remove firearms from folks who are a danger to themselves or a danger to themselves or a danger to others with a firearm. And so there are a specific group of folks who, per the statute, are able to petition for these types of orders, and that's law enforcement, city or county attorneys, a family or household member. And this family or household member is a more narrower group than when we think about it with orders for protection. And then guardians of the respondent can petition to seek this order from the court. And it looks similar-ish to an order for protection. That process looks similar-ish. So that means that you can petition and you get, if you ask, you can get an emergency order if you meet the standard of probable cause, and that means that order will be issued that day, right? And so you can get an order issued that day, unless it's at like 4 o'clock on a Friday, you're probably not gonna get it. But if you're, applying during regular business, not court business hours, you can get it that day. And the statute requires service within 24 hours, and that's a mechanism for being able to remove firearms. And then after 14 days, there can be a hearing that would provide longer term relief for 6 months to a year. There's one thing that you can get out of a extreme risk protection order, or otherwise known as an ERPO. You can get firearm removal and prevention of being able to possess firearms as long as that ERPO is in place. It is its sole purpose. You can't get anything else. If you want other things, then we may need to look at something like an order for protection, which provides lots of different relief and includes, after hearing, firearm prohibitions. But you can get one thing out of a extreme risk protection order. And the biggest advantage to an extreme risk protection order is that it creates a process for law enforcement to one, have to accept the firearms when they're being surrendered, and two, it creates a process for being able to get a search warrant to be able to go and obtain the firearms. And that is a process that doesn't exist in the order for protection process where firearms are being prohibited. So it gives very significant tools to all of us to either law enforcement or prosecution or family or household members to be able to not only get an order to be able to prohibit somebody from being able to possess while they're in a time of something going on that's scary, right? Scary for either themselves or scary for other folks. But it also creates a process for law enforcement to be able to obtain those firearms, hold them temporarily. This is a temporary order, and then a process for being able to return them. And that's what makes these really, these can be really, really powerful and very useful tools for folks who are really struggling or may not be safe. And so my role with the county attorney's office is right now it's a lot of training, it's technical assistance, it's helping law enforcement figure out this really brand new process that looks very different than anything else that they do, right? Law enforcement doesn't write protective orders. That's not what they do. They write police reports, which are very different than what we need to be able to show to the court. It puts law enforcement often in the role of what we call the petitioner. And that means law enforcement is responsible for proving to the court that the respondent is concerning for themselves or for others, and they're not used to being in that type of position. It requires law enforcement to do a search warrant in a non-criminal situation, which has been fascinating for providing advice around what does that look like. So I'm doing a lot of technical assistance to law enforcement and then technical assistance to the city attorneys in their process of figuring this out, and also a lot of technical assistance to the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. I'm doing a lot of training of advocacy about how does this work as they're supporting victim survivors that they're working with or family members that they're working with, in trying to figure out how to utilize this really powerful tool to the best that makes the most sense in our communities.
Could you walk us through kind of like what would it look like if an ERPO was granted, and like what does that really look like in I guess real life terms for a timeline and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's a family, say a family or household member has concerns, they fill out the petition, they file it with the court. It will, in Hennepin County, it will go to our family court judges. And right now there's actually only 2 judges that are signing these orders that are very familiar with a variety of things. And so it'll go in front of one of those judges who will read over the petition. They'll decide whether or not what's called probable cause exists. So it's a standard that's, is it more likely, is it likely in reading these facts, do I have a reasonable belief that when I read these facts that the situation is there? And they're looking to see, is this person, the respondent, a significant danger to themselves or to other folks with a firearm, right? That's the very important part. This is not just is somebody scary, it is, are they scary with a firearm? And why do we think that firearm piece is so important? So that's what the court's looking for. The court will decide if A, there's probable cause for that, and then B, they're also looking for, is there probable cause that this person possesses a firearm right now? Okay, because you could seek an ERPO when somebody is, say, suicidal, and they're threatening to harm themselves, and they're saying things like, I'm gonna go to Dick's and get a firearm and kill myself. Okay, they don't currently have a firearm, but they're making very significant planned statements about harming themselves with a firearm. So in that circumstance, we wouldn't have probable cause necessarily that they have a firearm right now, but it still makes sense to get the ERPO to prevent them from getting a firearm. We actually had a case very similar to that over in one of our suburban communities. A family member applied for a ERPO based on statements that the respondent was making. There was a lot of concern that they were going to go and get they were going to go buy a firearm and harm themselves. And so they got this ERPO. What happens after the court granted it is it goes into a federal database called NICS. And that database is something that all gun sellers have to check, right? People have heard that you have to do a background check to get a firearm. That's one of the things they have to check is NICS. And it showed up in NICS. It will go into NICS. 30 minutes later, this respondent who did not know that a ERPO had been filed, they hadn't even had a chance to serve it. But because our court was so quick in getting that information into NICS, they showed up at Shields, they tried to buy a firearm, they ran the background check, and she got flagged. And they told her, we can't sell this to you, I'm sorry, you're ineligible to possess a firearm. And she leaves, and she actually calls the police in her community and says, why can I not buy a firearm? And that actually led them to go and look at their fax machine and find out they had an ERPO to serve. So that quick action by the court and getting it put in and Shield's doing the things they need to do, it probably saved that person's life. Right, so that's a really powerful way of knowing that that these orders make a direct and immediate impact. So in that circumstance, there wouldn't have been this probable cause that she owned a firearm yet, because she didn't. But if the court makes a finding that there's probable cause that there are firearms, then that allows law enforcement to get a search warrant. And so what would happen is that the court will grant this extremist protection order. It'll get faxed over to the local PD of where the respondent resides, so where the respondent lives. And then local PD is responsible for serving the extremist protection order, and then if there has been probable cause that there is a firearm, they will also be responsible for obtaining that search warrant. And then they will go to serve the extremist protection order. The statute requires within 24 hours they have to serve. They'll go and serve the search warrant. They will ask the respondent, per the statute, are you willing to voluntarily turn over your firearms? If the respondent is willing to voluntarily turn over their firearms, they don't need to execute the search warrant. They go through a whole voluntary process. If the respondent is not voluntarily willing to turn over their firearms, then law enforcement will execute their search warrant and they will go in and they will take the firearms. And then there would be a hearing then in 14 days. So that's what that process should look like.
Thank you for breaking that down for us. Just was something curious I had, wondered what it really looks like in practice versus just kind of on paper we talked about. I thank you all so much for sharing your stories and about your work. This is really important. I want to open it up to audience questions, and I can run around with a microphone, but wanted to allow some time for folks to ask questions as well. If you have any.
Jen, the microphone also might not work, sometimes it only works up there.
Oh, okay.
It might work.
Does anyone have questions? Otherwise I have a phone. Okay.
So the question is how many extreme risk protection orders, or ERPOs, it's an awful acronym, isn't it? ERPO. How many ERPOs have been served or issued since the law passed? So the law went into effect on January 1st, right? So we've had it just coming up, just finishing up 10 months here. In Hennepin County, we've had 19. And then statewide, the last meeting I was at, which was a couple of weeks ago, it was 90. Wow. So, we didn't know, we were gonna have this onslaught where all these people are gonna be coming and filing extreme risk protection orders or what was gonna happen. I think it's been a little slower than we thought, but I think there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of laws changed in 2023, and so it's trying to get people to know that we have this massive change and this really great option available. Thank you.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah. So the question was, of those 19 that were filed here in Hennepin County, were those, did folks voluntarily turn over their firearms or were there search warrants executed? Honestly, I don't know the breakdown off the top of my head. I know for sure some of them went by search warrant, and I know that others happened voluntarily, but I don't remember off the top of my head how that breaks down. Absolutely, that's an excellent question. Thank you so much. So the question is there an opportunity for the respondent to be able to have their side of the story told to the court, right? Absolutely. So a hearing has to be held within 14 days. And then that's the time where the respondent can come in and explain to the court, either agree to the issuance of that order or explain to the court why they feel that order should not exist. And then if for some reason, and then if the court still decides that in that case, it's actually, when we have a hearing, it's clear and convincing evidence, which is it's a higher standard than your average civil standard. If the court makes that finding by clear and convincing evidence, it will issue that order for the longer period. The statute also then allows for the respondent one time every 6 months to be able to come in and ask again for the court to dismiss it because circumstances have changed. Right, a lot of these involve folks who are struggling with some significant mental health, especially when we're talking about suicide, right? So there's some significant mental health concerns, and maybe after 4 months they've done a lot of work and they're in a much better place, and They're able to show, they have to show by clear and convincing evidence once the order has been issued, that they are no longer a threat to themselves or others, or a significant threat to themselves or others. But that's really your question, yes, absolutely, a hearing is afforded.
From the mics here, just, he's asking where, we've seen multi-layered approaches here, to this issue, but where can we intervene more or earlier, in your opinion?
I can start. I think one of the biggest things is education in the school systems. I know that there are various domestic violence organizations and just community organizations that do provide those resources and education in an age-appropriate manner to students on healthy relationships. And I think that that is extremely important. What I will also say is at DASC, one of our contracts, as I mentioned earlier, is with the Domestic Abuse Project. They are a local nonprofit domestic violence organization that focuses on serving the whole family. So birth to 5 years old and then all the way up. And they serve both victim survivors as well as folks who utilize abusive behavior. And with this new contract, we have a new position for an intervention and prevention specialist. And that advocate's role is to work with folks who utilize abusive behaviors and primarily respondents on order for protections. First of all, respondents have rights. And also, their role is to provide support and education. Again, for a lot of folks who use abusive behavior, there are basic needs and resources that are needed. And then when it comes to education around an order for protection. What does an order for protection mean? Based on what they were ordered to do, what does that look like? What does no contact mean? If someone is ordered to turn, it must just be me.
It is you.
Electric
tonight.
I guess. If someone is ordered to turn over a firearm or to sign up for programming, oftentimes they're told by the court, all right, you're ordered to do this, go do that, right? Where do I start? How do I get support around that process? And so really the intervention and prevention specialist role is to provide them that education. And if we're thinking about it this way, by providing education and support and resources for folks who use abuse, that in turn is victim safety, which in turn is community safety. So kind of just a full circle moment in addressing safety as a whole and as a community.
Siri, can you add to that, the people's exposure in early life, like the relationship?
Yeah.
I was gonna get that too. I was just gonna say, I have a child protection lens because that's what Alliance Share of my work has been done in. But, so from my perspective, it's broader than just sort of I have the Siri syndrome. So it's broader to me than just the dealing with educating around domestic violence, addressing adverse childhood experiences, looking at the whole family, looking at early exposures to trauma, addressing not only familial trauma but cultural trauma and naming that and addressing that. I truly believe, and I'm biased, that some of the single most important work that our office does is child protection work, because if you heal a family, you can heal a community, and if you heal a community, we decrease trauma, then we decrease the trauma, right? It sounds like a bumper sticker, but hurt people hurt people. I truly believe that, and so if we get to the core of that and what's causing those traumas, I think we do a lot better job of sort of getting to the root of that, and we don't have to be here, sharing our stories anymore about what had happened to us.
Cece, did you want to?
You kind of already took everything I said. Yeah, like that. I'll just side with what they have to say.
I know in the City of Minneapolis Office of Violence Prevention, we had an initiative some years ago coaching young athletes into leaders, where we were going into the high schools and into the different sports teams, meeting with football players, basketball players, and teaching what a healthy relationship looks like. So really, how are we going upstream? And I was hearing all of us kind of saying that as well. I just wanted to throw that out there. I think we need more of that kind of prevention upstream. How are we getting ahead of this? I see another question.
You so there was a question about what my family or my community, people around me could have done different or better to sort of help me or us in a circumstance as somebody who is dealing with domestic violence. For me, I'm a real good secret keeper, right? So, a lot of people didn't know, and the people that did know, they knew such a tiny little bit of what I allowed them to know. So I think that's why sort of breaking down the broader barriers of embarrassment and shame. I always talk about like, there's not really any other crime for the most part. I mean, probably sexual violence, of course, but that carries the kind of shame that a victim has to carry. Like, I was so embarrassed, right? Like, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose my job, right? If they find out, I'm gonna get kicked out of law school, and your battery gets in your head, right? So how do we back up and teach people that I don't have to be, like the first time I got hit, why didn't I go to somebody and get help, right? Like, why was I so embarrassed about that? I still don't understand that necessarily. So I think it's broader than that. For me, like if somebody asks me like what I could do, I have a lot of people who come to me, I guess pay attention, right? Like I had somebody, a friend of mine, I didn't really even know her. I knew her from the gym, which I don't go to anymore. But I clearly, but I knew her from the gym, and she was posting something on Facebook, and it was like Lacey Peterson and different women that had sort of disappeared and been victims of domestic violence. And so there's some sort of meme she had posted, and something in my spirit just said I need to reach out to her. So I sent her a message, and I just said, "Are you okay?" And the floodgates opened, right? She wasn't okay. She was actually really unsafe. So I think paying attention, I call it dry snitching. Like people are telling on themselves. If you pay attention, they're telling, right? So if you pay attention to that and then meet them where they are, as a friend or a family, and advocates too, but as a friend or a family, I try to talk to people who come to me about being safer. Like it's not my place to tell you what you're gonna do. You're gonna stay or not stay. That's not my job. You came to me and want help, and I want you to not die. So how can I help you be safer, right? So does that mean, do we need a safe word? Does that mean you need to hide a bag at my house? Does that mean you need to start squirreling away some money? Like what does safer mean to you? You know, and if that means in or out of the relationship, what baby steps? I always talk about like it was a million little steps that led me to get out. It wasn't one giant step. I laid tons of little baby steps until I was actually ready. Well, and I don't even know if I would have been ready had I not got the hell beat out of me for 2.5 hours, right? Like, that kind of made me ready. But I had laid a foundation around me so that when that did happen, because I knew it was going to happen, then the cavalry came in for me. So how do I help somebody else do that?
I can add a little bit of something too. I guess from a victim advocate standpoint, when I'm working not only with victim survivors but with their families, I think sometimes that might be one of the hardest parts of my job, because again, victim survivors are their own person. They have their own mind, their own mindsets, their own decisions, and we have to validate that and respect that. And especially for somebody who is watching from the outside, is extremely difficult. It is extremely difficult to be a supporter of someone that is experiencing domestic violence, because you so badly, want that person out. You love them. You want the best for them, and you just can't wrap your head around why this person is not accessing the resources or listening to you or so on and so forth. And I hear it all the time. I'm so frustrated. I just I can't deal with this person anymore. I can't provide them support anymore, and that is so detrimental to victim survivors. Is again, that is what their abuser wants. They want them to be isolated. They want them to lose that support system so that they are continuing to be stuck. And so when I'm working with these families, really trying to educate them on, obviously, your frustrations, your sadness, your fear is valid as well. But the worst thing that you can do is say that you're not going to be there anymore.
Right.
Because you are creating this wall and this other, extra barrier that victim does not need. And so, and I have to remind myself of that sometimes too, because this work is hard. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. Being an advocate with domestic violence victims can be very challenging work, and can be frustrating. And I have to check myself sometimes and say, no matter how frustrated I am or how I don't understand what you're going through right now, I will always be there for you. if and when you get to the point where you want to access me or need support or need help. And that goes for my job, and that's when I, educate victim, survivor, supporters as well, is at least they know from the bare minimum, you might not have all the answers, but at least they know that when they get to that point where they want to put those, those little snippets down or actually want to get out or get that help, that no matter what they put you through in the past, you will always be there. And I think that that's helped me in my work, and it's also, I think it's helped a lot of families too in trying to provide that support. And that's, it doesn't necessarily even have to be family, it's community as well. It's you in the community that if you know that this person that you care about, or, this group of people that you care about, keeps doing this type of behavior, it's like I said, it's frustrating, you don't understand, it's easy just to walk away and say, excuse my language, but screw it, and just say it's not worth my time. But again, you're really creating a major detriment to that person if and when they get to that point of wanting to change. So putting yourself aside, putting your feelings aside, and always being available for them, I think is important for service providers, family members, community, whoever's trying to work with them to keep in mind.
Really important. I wanted to give Primrose an opportunity to answer that question too. Were there things that family or community could have done to better support you?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. Did I capture it accurately? Were there things that your family or friends, loved ones, your community could have done better to support you?
So as my family were there for me, they supported me. I can say 100%. They were there for me each and every time. Even my community, they were there for me. But as a person who was married, we were fighting, but I was going back, even if we separated. But if the guy come and plead with me, I was going back, And even my family was saying, why are you going back to this guy? But you know what is it? It's like when someone come and say, what, I'm sorry, this and that. So my family was there for me. I can say 100% they were there for me.
Wonderful. Siri, did you want to have something to add to that?
No, thank you for that. I was gonna say, as providers and as family and support, I think one of the most important things that you can say to someone who is just disclosed to abuse to you is that I believe you. And I'm sorry that happened. I think it's really important to understand that it's not a one size fits all. Every victim survivor's experience is different. They're walking a different path. They're experiencing different things, and really they are the expert in their situation. They know exactly what makes their abuser tick. We do not. And so it's so important for us to meet folks where they're at and support them in their journey. And again, as family too, remembering it's, it has nothing to do with us, and just not taking things too personally in that. And just Primrose, to your point too, just want to share kind of just a statistic. Domestic violence is extremely complex. And there are many, many different reasons why a victim survivor of abuse does not leave an abusive relationship. Employment, finances, children, fear, power and control, intimidation, the list goes on. And so on average, I think as family and support and community, understanding that it can take a victim on average 7 to 8 times to leave an abusive relationship. And I think, again, that's so important for us to remember as a community when we are extending support to victim survivors of domestic violence.
That is a great question, and I'll repeat it quickly. The question was around cultural sensitivity and a cultural aspect of the resources that we provide, and how do we work with organizations or other communities to provide those very culturally specific resources to folks who are experiencing that.
I'll just start talking briefly about DASC. And so that is our biggest service and our biggest resource at DASC is culturally specific advocacy. again, based on language and cultural needs and cultural barriers, what those resources look like are going to look different. And so we are going to meet you where you are at and get you connected with a culturally specific advocate if that is your request. If we are unable to provide that need, we will refer out to a culturally specific organization. In addition, I think that different barriers look different, and there's also different responses as a victim survivor to domestic violence and how someone might try to address the concern based on culture. So calling the police might not be the best step. Maybe consulting with community leaders or elders, for example, or going back to family. And so as providers and as support networks, anyways. Yeah, we're definitely gonna talk with you about what's gonna look best for you and what's gonna be safest for you and really weighing those pros and cons, understanding those cultural needs and cultural practices as well.
And I can add a little bit with my work, at least in regards to the 4th Precinct and the services that I provide. I obviously understand that I'm a white woman and that works predominantly with women of color. And when I first got this position, I had quite a few people kind of warn me, that this might be a challenging position for me. And I walked into that with an open mindset. And I think that being open and honest about not understanding has really helped me. So being open and honest of my race, of my color, and when I'm working with individuals of a different culture, different skin color, different beliefs than me, I never walk into the room and say that I understand, because I don't. And they will be the first ones to tell me that I don't understand. And so I don't put that barrier up. I instead just acknowledge, that I don't understand what you're going through, but I validate what you're going through, and what you're going through is real. And I do have experience, I have resources. If you feel comfortable, I'd be more than happy to try to provide that assistance. If you're not okay, you want something that's more culturally specific, that is 110% okay, I will get you connected to that type of person, whether it's through DASC or other agencies within the metro area. I never try to walk in saying that I know everything, that I have the answer for everybody, because I don't. And I think that approach really helped me succeed in the North Side, because again, I have a specific name, I'm not gonna say it here, but there's a specific name that the community uses for me, that I definitely take pride in now. But again, I think me validating that I am different than majority of the people that I work with has created a stronger trust in me and in the work that I provide. So because I agree with Siri, it is extremely important for people to have that culturally specific support. Again, that I'm not able to provide. And I think a lot of service providers have a hard time acknowledging that. I think service providers, sometimes when people come to them, they feel like they have to solve everything, they have to know everything, and that again creates a detriment to the person that they're trying to assist. And be okay with saying that's okay that I don't know, but I can find somebody that can. I think is really important to help building trust and respect in the community.
Great answer, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And I won't out your name at the committee calls.
Yeah.
I want to note though that we are a little bit over time. Just want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank our staff here, especially our community affairs folks who helped organize this event. Thank you all so very much. If you would not mind taking a moment to fill out, I think Farah brought around some QR codes, the survey, just how you think tonight went, things that we could maybe improve upon. Very much appreciated. But thank you all so much for coming. Appreciate it.